Of world champions can be a heavy one.
He can master any situation. Can't throw him any curves. And so you take the veil down for a minute and you kind of see he gets wounded by what it all takes to keep the circus tent blown up.
Keeping the circus on the road can take its toll. And the pressure of being at the top is starting to show on John and the rest of the band. December 31st, 1990, Tokyo, Japan. The band has been on the New Jersey Syndicate Tour for over 2 years. They're about to headline a New Year's Eve celebration at the Tokyo Dome, opening with the crowd pleaser, Living on a Prayer.
That was truly where I got into that, so to speak, the belly of the beast and saw the size of the Bon Jovi monster. When you're in an arena like the Tokyo Dome and there's 50,000 fans who don't even speak English and they're singing every word at the top of their lungs, well, you realize you're in an alternate universe. This is how big this band really is.
After the show, John and the band are mobbed by fans.
It was like they were the Beatles. They would have to go in an armored car and wait and hide out.
If they wanted to go to dinner in Japan, well, you're just going to have to close down the restaurant so you can eat in peace, essentially. I mean, that's the thing. You want to be famous, that's part of the price you're going to pay for being famous.
We're in Japan, and I said to him, hey, why don't we go to the Zen Gardens tomorrow? We're not seeing the cool stuff in Tokyo. And he says, when I'm on the road, I see the cities through my hotel window or my bus window. And he said it with sort of a sigh, but they're missing stuff. They're missing what's glorious about getting paid to be on the road.
John's obsession with constantly making Bon Jovi bigger and better is taking a toll on his relationship with his burnt-out bandmates.
The front man is the head of the corporation. It's what Steven Tyler called LSD, lead singer's disease. You have to guess that when you have a really strong front man, that he's the last word, right?
The drive and ambition of John kind of almost like broke the band in certain respects.
After 5 years of back-to-back tours, a divide has formed between John, the workaholic businessman, and the rest of the band.
Living together, literally being married to each other for 3 or 4 or 5 years, was taking its toll.
They just didn't speak to each other, but that's like a husband and a wife. They get angry at each other and they don't talk to each other for a few days. Giving me the silent treatment? Oh, good.
February 1990, Sayreville, New Jersey. The members of Bon Jovi return home and immediately go their separate ways.
Right after those shows, they didn't speak to each other for a long time. That was burnout.
There was nothing to say to each other in a room because you were there with them last night. You know, everything you did, good, bad, or indifferent, you did together.
I said to John as a friend, I said, put some balance in your life, you know, just to get some perspective of where you're going to go next.
With the band's future uncertain, John needs an outlet for his energy and experiments with a solo career.
As kind of a palate cleanser, John takes on a job writing the soundtrack for Young Guns 2, and he comes out with a hit, Blaze of Glory. He thinks that's great because I don't have to consult with anybody making that work.
It was a perfect time for him to do a solo album.
It's really an experiment. It was meant to be an experiment. The band had a very conscious attempt to take 2 years off in order to learn new things to bring back to the fold. Because regardless of how successful a record or a tour is, the experiences were always the same. There's nothing left to talk about between the 5 of us, you see.
Blaze of Glory is a huge success, reaching #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, and wins the Golden Globe for Best Original Song.
I burned my guys in the band out. They were exhausted. And I just got this burst of energy at the end of the tour, and when the opportunity came up, I wrote the stuff.
But solo work isn't enough for the high-achieving Jon Bon Jovi.
He takes a small part in the film, and that in turn starts a little bit of an acting career, and that turns into something as well.
John goes on to star in Ally McBeal and Sex and the City. But there's a problem. The once inseparable bandmates are now like strangers.
Yeah, he can do a solo career, but it's not the same as what he had before.
To the outside world, John has it all. But in reality, estranged from the band, he's lost.
John had a depressed period. They called it the gray summer. He was drinking a lot. And once you feel things are starting to slip, some people become aware of, oh, those perks are going to go away. That adulation is going to go away. Like, oh, is this ride ending now?
In 2021, John spoke candidly about this time.
There was a period in time when I got physically and mentally really burned out. So I think if I could have told the 18-year-old, relax, it all will be okay if you need to take more breaks.
John's wife, Dorothea, tries to piece him back together.
The guy was a mess. She decided, right, we're taking you to a shrink. We're going to sort out your head.
Back then, therapy had much more of a stigma attached to it. People didn't want to go discuss their problems. I mean, this is a guy who's in one of the biggest bands in the world.
On the journey to the clinic, it all becomes too much for John.
He tries to throw himself out of the car. They get to the doctor's office and he rejects that as well. He's really not even well enough to acknowledge that he's not a well man.
He's not the person who is used to being personally vulnerable in any way or revealing anything personal about himself. And going to a therapist would be having to reveal those personal stories to a stranger. I think to him, vulnerability is essentially a type of self-death.
The business John has been building since he was a teenager has fallen apart. He's at a personal rock bottom, and his relationship with the band is in tatters. They are exhausted from touring and worn down by John's relentless drive.
Everything takes wear and tear on everyone, being with the same people. Things happen.
You're on your own. And that can be kind of more scary than people having your back.
But despite being at rock bottom, John has refused therapy.
Going to a therapist would be having to admit to any personal weaknesses that he may have perceived. He has never had to do that in his entire life, and he wasn't ready to do it now, even during his darkest moments.
Ever the pragmatist, John decides to take control of his life, starting with the band and people around him. He begins by focusing on his relationship with the band's longtime manager, Doc McGhee.
It got to a stage when Doc McGhee was not paying attention to the fact that the band were just so sick of each other. They were absolutely dysfunctional as a band. They could not do their job, and he was not sensitive to that.
So John makes a bold decision.
He fires Doc and decides to take over management of the band.
And he just kind of takes the reign of the whole corporation, the Bon Jovi Corporation.
Now in control, John has to work out a strategy to get Bon Jovi back together and back on top. While he is reluctant to have therapy himself, when the band's involved, it's a different matter. He hires a psychologist for a group therapy session.
I think this was a strategic business move. John's thinking, get this situation under control so we can get back on the road, make good music, and make money together. But I also think that John does care for his bandmates. He also did care about them as people.
Slowly but surely, they end up admitting that, yes, they feel like he's a workaholic, and that there were points on tours when they've been literally begging to go home. So everybody gets heard, and it's in this safe environment where everybody feels like they can finally get stuff off their chest.
The sessions work, and empowered, the band decides to try and make Bon Jovi a thriving business once again.
The band itself has to have a mutual respect and a sense of camaraderie that will ultimately transcend all the drama and the pain that comes from just staying together and getting on stage.
Spring 1992. Re-energized, Bon Jovi goes back into the studio to record a 5th album.
John thinks, oh, I'm going to create this vibey little cozy bubble situation. He gets a lot of lamps and candles and, you know, wants to kind of like get this lovely little groove going.
But after a couple of hours, things take an unexpected turn.
The excessive number of candles he brought in was sucking the oxygen out of the studio, so everyone's kind of sleepy. So once they fixed that little situation, then it got better.
John's plan to take control and to revive the business seems to be working. On November 3rd, 1992, Bon Jovi releases its 5th album, Keep the Faith.